So the PlayStation VR 2 is going to be released in less than a month's time. The official release date is February the 22nd, and I've got to be honest, I think the PlayStation VR 2 is going to be the next gold standard in VR. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be the best VR experience you can get, but in terms of having fantastic hardware and being able to play VR at some of the top levels in an easy way, I think it could be. Now, I have pre-ordered my PlayStation VR 2 and I expect it to turn up on the 22nd. It probably will end up coming at the end of the week so that all my videos are late, but hopefully it turns up on the first day of release. And I am incredibly excited. In fact, I was so excited about the whole thing that I actually bought a PlayStation 5 just so I could get this VR headset. Now, I'm loving the PlayStation experience already for completely different reasons, but that is the main reason why I've invested in this, is so I could get into PlayStation VR 2. Now, there are some pros and cons to that. I'm fully aware that there are going to be a lot more limited titles on the PlayStation VR 2 than I have on my current VR headset, which is the Quest 2, but I'm hoping that some of the performance boosts from having the console powering the game and from some of the better sort of optics that we have in the headset, that is going to be a worthwhile upgrade. Not that I'm getting rid of the Quest 2, but just so that I have this new experience, I guess. But one of the things I'm really excited about is the fact that Sony, who have these amazing PlayStation exclusive games, are going to be investing more money into VR. They're starting off with the PlayStation exclusive Horizon Call of the Mountain, and I am very, very excited with that. I've not played the Horizon games, so I'm going to try and have a go on some of the ones that are currently available on the PlayStation before I get that one. But I will be getting that with the launch, so I can actually test out some of the cool PlayStation exclusive VR experiences that you're going to get with this. But I'm actually pleasantly surprised at some of the launch games that have been announced for this thing. First thing I was concerned about was whether there'd be a lack of games. Now, PlayStation has said the PSVR 2 is not going to be backwards compatible, which is understandable to a degree. I don't really know why, and maybe that will come in like sort of updates later down the road, but at the moment that's not going to be the case, which means that's a whole load of content that they're not going to have on this headset, and there's a lot of content that people that might have already purchased that they're not going to be able to reuse. Now, I was thinking that means we're going to be starting from scratch, but actually there's a surprisingly large amount of content coming on launch day, which is actually quite impressive, and a lot of it's some pretty good stuff. So the first one is actually a PlayStation exclusive, and I've already spoken about it, called Horizon Call of the Mountain, and that's going to be taking advantage of all of the features on this new headset. And that's something I'm really excited about, is the fact that they're going to have PlayStation exclusives and high-end AAA games in VR, and that's something, if you've played on the Quest, it's sort of missing, is those sort of like AAA game experiences. So that's going to be really exciting. And along with that, there's going to be Gran Turismo 7 is going to be having a free update to support PlayStation VR, which means you're going to be able to play Gran Turismo 7 in full VR with full compatibility. And that's free of charge as well, so if you've already bought the game, it's just an update. So, I mean, more reason to actually buy Gran Turismo 7. So that's definitely something I'm going to be testing out as well. Now, alongside those two massive PlayStation games, we also have a few VR favourites, things like Beat Saber or Pistol Whip. And then alongside that, we also have a PC VR favourite, a first-person shooter, Pavlov. And that just goes to show that actually this thing isn't just going to be limited to the classic VR titles, that they're bringing in some pretty impressive games in. Now we also have the Walking Dead Saints and Sinners sequel, Retribution, and then a whole selection of other games as well. Now added to that, we have obviously some very impressive specs. You've got the fact that it's going to be powered by the PlayStation 5, which is a pretty impressive machine in its own right. You've got things like eye tracking and foveated rendering, and you also have some pretty high resolution displays in there as well. But now, just to go back to sort of my initial statement, why I think this is going to be sort of the gold standard in virtual reality, and I think I have a very good reason for it. Now, those specs are really impressive, especially if you compare them to something like the Quest 2. And ultimately, you would expect that. You'd expect to get a better headset because it costs more. Now, you can get a Meta Quest 2, I mean, what I paid for it, £399. And the PSVR 2 is something like £550. So it's a pretty significant price increase, especially considering that the headset alone isn't going to do anything unless you have a PS5. Now, luckily, the stock issues for the PS5 seem to be sorted, and Sony are claiming that they've sold millions and millions of these consoles, which is easy to believe because they have been in very high demand. But this is a pretty steep price tag on top of the £500 you're already going to be paying for a PS5. And at a total price tag of over £1,000 before you've even got any games, it is not the cheapest way to get into VR. Now, I actually bought my PS5 just so I could get the PSVR 2. So it's a bit of an investment for me, I'll be honest with you. But I'm honestly massively impressed with the PS5 as it stands. I think the PS5 is a phenomenal machine. Now, a lot of people will say that the gold standard should be PCVR, and I completely get your point. When you're focusing on the games that you can play and the graphical capabilities, a high-end gaming PC is going to be considerably better than this. And that is my theory, I reckon. If you get a decent headset and a decent PC, it's going to be considerably better. However, when we're looking at that steep price tag for the PlayStation and the PSVR 2, when you start looking at that on a PC VR setting, suddenly that gets a lot more expensive. In order to get a PC that's going to be able to play games as well as the PlayStation, you're going to be probably looking closer to that £1,000 just on the PC before you even have a headset. And then if you want to get a headset on top of that, you can go for something like the Quest 2, or you can go sort of a bit more high end and go for like sort of the Valve Index and something like that. But you're going to be spending way more money on VR. So when you look at budget wise, this is actually quite a mid-range option as opposed to being a high end or a low end. Ultimately, if you already have a PS5, then it is just the £500 to get into it. So you've got to weigh that up as well. And if you do pay the £1,000, you do get a PS5 with it. So it isn't entirely a bad decision. Now the thing is, the reason why I think that this is the gold standard is the reason why a lot of people will get a console and no one just flocks to getting gaming PCs. And that is because it's just easier. The ease of use of a PS5, just picking up a controller and playing, is so much better. You're not having to deal with all of the faff of a PC, Windows, which is horrible. Now, I know for a lot of people using Steam VR and something like a Quest is a bit of a pain. You can't just sort of play these PC VR games very quickly. You've got to do a little bit of work. I don't do PC VR, so citation is needed on all of this. I think this will be the gold standard. One, because it looks like a pretty specced out bit of kit anyway. And then when you throw in the fact that you're just going to have to plug it in and play, I mean, that's got to be a highlight for a lot of people. But I don't just think that. I actually think the PlayStation VR is going to improve the industry as a whole. Now, VR gaming is a very quickly growing marketplace, and people are getting involved in a lot of ways, mainly down to the Quest 2, but PC VR has got a big part to play in that as well. Now, I made a big point in my last video when I was comparing the Pico 4 to the Meta Quest 2 and how I felt like it didn't do enough to compete with the Quest 2, even though it's probably a better headset. Now, I think as much as this is not going to be in the exact same market as the Quest 2, I feel like this is going to be, for a lot of people, a preferred option. I think if I'm going to be getting something primarily for gaming, I'm going to just put more trust into a company that has been working with gaming consoles for a longer time. And ultimately, since I've got a PlayStation, the thing that I'm loving about it more than I loved my Xbox is just how good the exclusives are and how many exclusives there are. And if PlayStation are going to keep that up and invest into the VR space, then this could be a really, really strong competitor. It means more developers are going to want to get into this space. They're going to create better games. And I mean, the industry will just benefit as a whole. Now, I do have some concerns about PSVR 2. I mean, I know from looking around, there's been a lot of people that are very happy with their PSVR 1. And my only thing is that sort of just disappeared off the face of the earth. I didn't really hear a lot about it. And when I got into VR through the Quest, no one ever really talked about the PSVR, do you know what I mean? So it's hard to know that whether this will be a big hit or if it will be a flop. And the problem is that if this is a flop and Sony just throw it out there and then don't continue to invest in games, then is it going to be something that's going to be worth that sort of steep price tag? then you don't have any new games coming out for it regularly. Ultimately, my dreams for this PlayStation VR 2 are for it to become this new hub of virtual reality gaming. I mean, I'm a little bit frustrated about the things like the cable that are going to be in it, and it's not wireless, but I do get it. I understand that actually you're going to get a better experience wired. You don't have to deal with things like batteries, which are obviously going to make the headset much heavier. So I'm in a bit of a weird position. I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on one to test it, and I'm going to do a whole ton of videos on it. So if you are looking at it and you're sort of unsure, do subscribe, because I'm hopefully going to be able to answer all of your questions. But at the moment, I don't know what to think. I'm excited. I'm nervous, and hopefully I haven't just wasted £550 getting another VR headset when I already have two. But I want to know what you think. Are there any particular games you're looking forward to on the PlayStation VR? Do you think it's going to be a massive flop? Put down in the comments your thoughts. But for now, guys, thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Woo!